Let's get this thing going. There you go. Firstly, Erev Tov to everybody. Again, just to share with you my kind of reluctance in a way of what I call the series that we're going through at the moment, the disastrous end of the Book of Judges. But the reality is pretty disastrous. This evening we're going to end the official Book of Judges, meaning that Shimshon is really, is put forward to us as the last judge. He isn't. We've got Elia Cohen at the beginning of the book of Shmuel, and Shmuel himself essentially is a Shoftim. So we will have two more judges, but they're not in Sefer Shoftim. Rav Rabinovich, the Das Sofrim, he wants to suggest that because Shmuel was a Talmud of Eli, the high priest, he didn't want to write about his Rabbi in such a, maybe a critical way, whatever it was, so he didn't include him in the book of Judges. It's a speculation. A little story about Rabbi Rabinovich. He lived in Yerushalayim, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but I knew him 40 years ago because I worked in Bank Mizrachi, and he was one of the clients there. And when he came in, he sat down and he said, he's Rabbi Rabinovich. So I said, I've heard of a Rabbi Rabinovich who wrote a commentary on Tanakh. He said, yeah, that's me. That's only happens in Jerusalem, and it's not an ordinary commentary. It's 20 volumes on the Bible. Unbelievable. And he did offer me a job. He said, I need someone to translate my commentary. But I decided that probably was not going to be an easy job. And some of the volumes did get translated, and they are available in English. So very, very special, very tsanua man, very, very tsanua. But there he was, larger than life, I guess. All right, so tonight it's going to be Samson and Delila. It's a little bit of a hakdama before we go into this. The famous question, what was the source of his strength? Okay, we know that in the movies it's all about cutting his hair, and then the hair was gone, and all of a sudden he's weak. Is that really what it's all about? Just to backtrack a little bit, remember we saw that there was the birth of Shimshon with the angel and the whole thing, and he's a nozim beten, he's a before he's born, he's already a Nazarite. And of course, the question then is, what exactly is the purpose of that? And we explained that gave him an extra layer of strength, of resistance. Whenever he's in a difficult situation, which he does put himself in all the time, particularly in terms of relationship with the ladies of the Plishtim, he very much wants to control his inclination. He wants to control his Yetzer Hara. And in order to do that, he needs some extra help. And the concept is that the Nazirut would protect him. There is such a concept. And of course, you'll see in the stories of when he gets involved with Delila, all of that flies away. But basically, what I want to sort of set up, the paradigm is that there are essentially two levels of strength. There was physical strength. There was extra physical strength. Because when he fought the lion, for instance, and when a few of the other stories that were told, it doesn't say the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Ruach Hashem nafal alav, or words to that effect. It just says he went ahead and tore a lion in two, okay, which is not something that we normally do. Or when he tied the foxes together, as we explained last time, which again is something which is a little bit crazy, but that's what he did. These are feats of strength. So he does have an innate physical strength. Now, did he look like a muscle man? I don't know. I don't know what he looked like. We're not told. But the reality was that there was also a deeper layer, a layer of spiritual strength. And that's something which I spoke about many times when I was teaching this, because very often it just reminded me of something I read during the Holocaust. There was a group of Bachurei Yeshiva of Gerech Hasidim who decided they were in Warsaw. They were in a bunker in a who knows where, somewhere in the middle of Warsaw, and they were that already the world has collapsed around them, and they decided everything that the Germans, Yimach Shimon, would say and command, they would do the opposite. That's what they decided to do. So the Germans said, you got to go out and be present. They would not go. And they sat and learned day and night for literally till they were finally taken out by force, I think probably during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And again, the comment was, and the book was written about these guys, very, very interesting book. And the comment was that although they did not exhibit physical strength so much, well, they must have had tremendous physical strength as well, but what they did exhibit amazingly was spiritual strength. To be able to go against the run of what was going on all around them was truly remarkable. I don't think there are any survivors of that particular group, but the stories have survived. There was a man in America who passed away only not so long ago, who wrote for the Yiddish newspapers, and Friedenson, I don't know if anyone knew him, and he was someone who relayed these stories. He was in the ghetto, and he knew exactly what this group was doing. So again, I'm just bringing that as an example. There sometimes is physical strength, and then there is what I would like to describe as the deeper level of spiritual strength. And this is something which is going to become apparent once we start looking at this whole story of Shimshon and Delila. And I'm not going to start singing the song. We tried that on Shabbat and everybody knows it. So we're going to move on, even though we can ask the question, why Delila? But then we'll find out. All right, so we've got chapter 16. We're going to go through this. Every time I read the word Azza, it always gives me a little bit of a chill. And the beginning of chapter 16 is Shimshon going back to Gaza. He's 20 years. We said at the end of chapter 15, he was a judge for 20 years. And of course, what that means, we're told that there was a break. There was a hiatus, 20 years. No tsaros from the Plishtim, no tsaros from, in those days, what was going on. And he stayed in Eretz Israel and he did his judging, right? Like all the judges, they transmitted both court cases, they transmitted the decisions of court cases, and they also transmitted, according to the Rambam, they transmitted the oral Torah. So Shimshon had an element to him which is certainly not apparent from the pshat, from the cursory reading of the text, but there is this element right through the period of judges that they were entrusted with the oral law. It's very interesting. Rambam makes a very big deal about this because he said, how was it transmitted? And their responsibility was to pass on those traditions, starting with Otniel ben Kenaz right at the beginning, right through now to Shimshon. So I throw that in there because, that gives an extra dimension. We're sort of fleshing out the character a little bit more. But listen to this, Pasuk Aleph, and this is where it gets a little bit, I'm going to use the word sordid because the only word I can think of. Vayelech Shimshon Azata. So chapter 16, we're going to go through the parak. Hopefully we'll finish it today. And we'll have to say our epitaph. This is one of my exam questions I always gave. Write a short epitaph on Shimshon. And of course, as I explained last time, the word epitaph immediately created a problem because nobody knew what I was requiring. So I said a hesped, and I think most of the students knew what a hesped was, at least. Epitaph they had never heard of. Anyway, Pasuk Aleph, Vayelech Shimshon Azati. He goes back to Gaza. It seems that he senses that he's got to go back into the fray. Remember what Shimshon's modus operandi was, to go and be the one-man army, right? He fights them, he kills many of them, 1,000 with a jawbone. I mean, it's unimaginable what was going on. And they were petrified of him, and at one point they even asked the Jews to hand him over. And eventually, remember from the end of the last chapter, they tried, but it failed, and he killed another 1,000. The numbers that just add up here is credible. And this is not the Ministry of Health from Gaza, as those numbers which are really made up. But anyway, the reality of it is that, here the numbers are recorded, and it's just very interesting. It's interesting that Shimshon now feels he's got to go back. But of course, remember we explained the way that he went about this. The rabbis do literally gymnastics in order to try and explain how he connected with these women, and they play on the concept of giyur. And as I explained last time, with all due respect, to say that there was conversion going on here is very, very difficult. The whole purpose of Shimshon being in Gaza was to be, one of them, not one of us. Meaning that he would want to blend in the audience, he wanted to blend in the population. So to make these women Jewish, and to sort of start putting on a mitpachar or whatever they would wear, who knows? That doesn't fly with the story. So I explained last time there's a whole derech in the Bible called Avera Lishma, doing a sin for the sake of heaven, and this, I think, is really the way that I would feel more comfortable explaining this, that Shimshon was doing what was essentially an Avera, but it was for the sake of God. And if it's for the sake of God, for saving the Jewish people, then there is a lot of tradition to say this is allowed. It's not something that we encourage, but it's something that does take place in the biblical era. So let's see what he did. He went back to Gaza, Vayar Sham Isha Zona, and he saw a woman who was Zona. And this, of course, is the famous word that from the days of Rachav gets explained as something to do with Birkat HaMazon, that she used to have a lot of food in the house. But generally speaking, it's more likely that the word Zonah means exactly what it means. that she was a woman of the night. She was a harlot. And he, as you say today, he hooked up with her. Basically, she would be his way of getting in to, again, he's back. He's in the Philistine well. Now, they heard that he was coming, and he brings here an interesting suggestion that he put out a message today. You would say on social media, he put out a message that he's in the vicinity. So the people of Gaza, the Gazans, were worried. So look what happened. Pasuk bet lazatim leimor. The word got through to the people of Gaza. Bo Shimshon heina. This guy Samson is back. Oy vavoy lonu. Vayosovu vayervu lo kol halayla. So they made a trap for him. So they wanted to catch him once and for all. Let's get the guy and let's do away with him. B'shah ha'ir, they waited at the gate of the city in order to, either that he was coming in, they would capture him when he came in, or he was trying to run away. Vayitcharshu kol halayla leimon. They were there keeping silent. Ad ora boker v'ragnu. They're going to kill him by the light of day. They're going to capture him and do away with him. So Shimshon's a smart guy. What did he do? I love the fact that he went to sleep. He wasn't worried. If you have something on your mind like this, you probably would be a little bit concerned. No, he goes to sleep till midnight. He gets up in the middle of the night. He got up in the middle of the night, right? Which again is so interesting. It talks about David HaMelech. Also got up in the middle of the night. He was woken up by his instrument, right? The lyre, whatever it was, the thing that he used to play, whatever. I don't know what exactly how you translate it. But phenomenal story. He just, I can't even explain how he did this. He just took hold of the gates of the city. Gaza used to have gates. Again, it gives me the chills, this, because, when you think about the fence that was dividing between us and Gaza, it really, I don't know. For Shimshon, that would have been even easier to get rid of, I guess. It's very scary, that the whole scenario that went on down there, which still has to come out, I guess. Anyway, he took the gate of the city, b'shtei hamzuzot, and also the pillars, the doorposts or the gateposts, vayisa'im im habriach, and he took the whole thing together with the lock, because they used to lock it up at night. Vayosem al kteivav, and he carried these gates on his shoulders. So of course the rabbis say he was a very, very strong guy, and the width of the gates was 100 amas or something like that, and he had shoulders which were 100 amas wide, and the rabbis enjoy getting into what we call guzma. They like to exaggerate, in order to sort of paint a bigger picture than really existed. But whatever, he certainly did something incredible. And where did he take them? He took these gates up to a high ground over there. Sderot, I don't think Sderot is so high up, but there may be some other place further along. Ashel Panei Chevron, towards Chevron. And this again is very interesting because he didn't actually carry them. One commentary wants to suggest he took them all the way to Chevron. So even if you allow him the ability to run with these things on his back, that is quite a distance, even by today's standards. So it seems to me there was a high place there which was looking towards Chevron. And as if to say that, Ezri me'im Hashem, my strength comes from God, as represented by those who are buried in Hebron, etc., etc. So there's some significance to mention that it's all to do with the fact that it's facing Hebron. There may be more symbolism here, but I'll leave you to investigate. But listen to this. They were blown away. The Gazans, they obviously realized that this guy is just too much for us, and they decide that we're going to have to bring him down, and the only way we can bring him down is with using one of our to this very day it's one of those things that gets on the front page of the newspaper, even the 21st century. I suppose today you would call it entrapment, right? Let's find a woman that he really does connect with, and we can entrap him in that way. And the thing that, again, amazes me is how some of the commentaries here paint a picture of Delila as being very innocent at the beginning, and then she was converted, and then she went back on her status and helped the police. It's very hard to buy that particular version of events because it just doesn't fit in. What Delila represented, as far as I'm concerned, Delila was, she represented here the enemy in the sense of she was a princess. She must have been very high up in the hierarchy of the Plishtim, And if you're going to really get into Plishti society, like Shimshon wanted to do, you go for the princesses. You go higher up the chain, right? You don't. He stayed with the women of low repute, and now he's going to go for the woman of higher status. And I think that's what Delila is all about, and why he goes for her. So listen to this, Pasuk Dalet. And the word v'yehav is unusual here. So normally his relationships were not based on love. His relationships were based on utility. He used these women in order to create a space in the world of the Plishtim. But here he fell for her. And it says Nachal Shorek. It's called Nachal Shorek. And the rabbis say Shorek, they play on the letter Shin, and they change it to a letter Samach. Nachal Sorek, they call it. Sorek means a fruitless river, right? Meaning that what happened was that at this point, from now on, the fruits of his efforts are going to be barren, basically. It's coming to an end. What was her name? Ushma Delila. Her name was Delila. Just to read to you the rabbinic commentary, Delila, this is taken from Midrash, and also it comes in Gemara Sota. The Gemara Sota has got a big thing about Shimshon. And the Gemara says, what's Nachal Sorek? Just read this to you very quickly. Ki ilan she'en oseh peirot. It's like a place which doesn't produce fruits. And he says, Kach kivan shenishtalesh bechet. Shimshon here was involved with sin on 3 levels. Nasem muad la'aver. It's very interesting. Those who learn the daf, the page of Talmud every day, we just finished not so long ago, Baba Kama. Baba Kama talks about an animal, a goring ox, right? Which always today is very hard to find such a thing, but I guess they still do exist. The ox gores 3 times. It goes from the status of being what is called a tam, where the damages are only half that. If he caught $100 of damage, he only pays $50. However, if he's gored 3 times, then you pay full damages. So what the rabbis try to say with Shimshon is that he is now going to be the equivalent of the ox which is gored or has been goring, meaning he is now in a much more dangerous and vulnerable position, right? He is now being called a muad. Muad means an ox that gores 3 times. What's the 3 times? And the Gemara explains. The Gemara explains that her name Delila, right, comes from the Hebrew word dal. Mikimi me offer dal. We just said it yesterday in the Hallel. Dal means someone that's poor, that's of low status. It also means dalil. It's also the idea of diluting, almost the same word in English. And basically, what happened was that this woman Delila took Shimshon down 3 levels. It says Dildalet kocho. She uprooted. She diluted his strength. Dildalet libo. She affected his heart, right? Because Yehav, he felt a very strong connection with her, and that was really a major element in the downfall of Shimshon. And finally, Dildalet Ma'asa, Distalek Shechina Minei, she caused the divine presence to depart from Shimshon. So there were 3 levels of sin. And as a consequence of those 3 levels of sin, Shimshon now is in territory where he thinks he's in control, and in fact he isn't. His strength is going to go away from him, both the physical strength that we spoke about at the beginning, and also the spiritual strength is going to go away as well. And it's again, talking about movies, the expression in the movie, I would think of one bridge too far, right? He literally went 1 step too far here, for reasons which are really not very clear. But I guess, as I said before, maybe stepping up to go to the hierarchy of the Plishtim, to keep them at bay for another who knows how many years, if he could do so. And unfortunately, at this point, his gamble did not pay off. And look what happened. Pasuk He. Vayalu elea sarnei Plishtim. Now, to say that she was not connected to the Philistines at this point is difficult. They actually, from the way it's expressed it, they knew her. And they came to her, all the officers of the Philistines, Vayarmula, Patioto. They said to her, you got to seduce this guy. You got to make sure, you got to find out what is the secret of his strength. He's been bashing us around for years. Find out, let us know. How is he so strong? What does he eat? what does he do? They didn't have gyms in those days. Well, maybe they did. Who knows? Where's it all coming from? And we will be able to capture him so that we can afflict him. Initially, the previous story, they wanted to kill it. At this point, they're happy if they can capture him so that they can torture him. Because again, they feel that he's caused so much grief to the Plishtim that it's their opportunity to cause him grief. And this is the kicker to me, that they say to her, we will give you ish elef u'mea kesef. There's, I don't know how many dignitaries are there. Each one is carrying a bag of money, 1,100 pieces of silver. And, it's a, sort of Shakespearean moment here. You're selling your soul, selling off the person for some gold or silver, whatever. It clearly says that Delila, her morals, her standards were non-existent at this point. She's prepared to sell him out for the money. And Pasuk Vav, and it's a fascinating story. Vatomer Delila el Shimshon. And here we're going to have to get a little bit graphic, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, because there is certainly something going on here which is very personal. Vayehav, he felt a connection to her, a love to her, but at the same time, there's something happening here where she is toying with him, and he is toying with her. There's an intimacy going on here, right? Now, we can't avoid this. You can't sort of skirt around this. And he says the following. She says to him, "Hagida nali b'meh kocha gadol." Straight out, tell me, how are you so strong? How can we ever tie you up to torture you? But it's being said not as a real question, as a playful repartee between her and him. And what does he say to her? He plays along because he is now, let's use the word, blinded, if that's the word to use, or overwhelmed with his feelings towards her. So Shimshon says, let's try. Im yasruni b'shiva yitarim lachim asher lo charavu. Bring 7 moist bowstrings, whatever that means. Pieces of rope, right? And they're still wet, whatever. In other words, they're fresh. V'chaliti v'hayiti kachad adam. Tie me up, and I'll be as weak as any man in the street looking out of the window. I mean, this is all happening, I'm convinced, all happening in the bedroom. It has to be. Right? And this is, again, as I said, this is just the scenario that we have to deal with here. But Shimshon is, and the rabbis are aware of this, they say it quite explicitly, you'll see in a minute. More to the point, they even point out that, that this is a moment in Shimshon's existence where his inner spiritual strength has been compromised. And it doesn't protect him anymore. Because he is given in to all of this fanciful connection with Delila, his ability to sort of hold back and to control, self-control, has gone out of the window. And listen to this, Pasuk Chet. V'ya'alu lo sarnei plishtim shiva yitarim lachim. So the guys who are providing her with what she needs, they bring these ropes. Asher lo charavu, they're still not even dry yet. But ta'asreu b'hem, and they tie him up. Right? And of course, this is all a big game. And Shimshon sort of is having a bit of fun here. And there's a whole group of them sitting in the room next door. And the game it's like a kinderspiel here. She's saying to him, the Plishtim are here. Right? The police are here. Get out. And of course, Vayinatek to the Ayatarim, he burst out of the ropes. Kasha Yinatek Patil Na'ored Bahar. As the fantastic description, it's like a piece of flax in a flame. If you ever tried that, it just goes up and disappears in seconds. If there's any fire around, then this flax will get burnt up. And of course, they're just no wiser as to what is the real cause of the strength of Shimshon. He can't be contained by these ropes. But as you see, the game gets more and more sinister as it goes on. Pasuk Yud, Vatomer Delila el Shimshon, Hinei heitalbi. Now she's really working on him, right? She's using her femininity. I think you can't avoid this. And she's saying, you're making fun of me. Vatadabere like Kazavim, and you're starting making up bubamaises. You're telling stories which are not true. Ata hagida nali b'meh te'asa. I love the fact there's always the word no. No in Hebrew always means please, right? So it's just interesting. Please, or now. Yeah, there's two translations of it. Tell me now. It makes it more emphatic, but maybe she's still being kind to him. I need you not leave. Please tell me. She's sort of getting more desperate. But how can we tie you up in order to neutralize you? So he says, okay, let's continue the game. And of course, the men next door, he doesn't know that they're there, right? I mean, they've handed in the ropes. Maybe they came in. It was a waltz. They left it at the door. Who knows? The reality was that he's not aware of the fact that they're waiting in anticipation to grab him, right? Because this is just a game between the two of them. But let's see what happens. Pasuk Yudala. Vayomer Eleh Imoso Yasruni Bavotim Chadashim. Let's try a different tack. Let's get some new ropes. Asher lo naseh bahem malacha, which have never been used. In other words, they're a bit stronger than the ones we used last time. Try that. V'chaliti v'yiti kachad adam, and then I will go down into the world of being a regular, commoner gardener human being. Now, Vatikach Delila Avotim Chadashim. So she went down to the local tambor and she brought the new ropes. Vatasreiru bahem, and starts tying him up. Right, and again, as I said, there's a sort of a play thing going on here between the two of them. And I think there's a heavy sexual overtones. I have to say it because it's screaming loud here. But and the rabbis say this because Shimshon was overly reliant on his ability to control himself in situations which, under normal circumstances, it was uncontrollable. And he failed. He finally went over the edge. He went beyond the boundary, and it worked against him, as we'll see in a minute. But Shimshon, again, the same game. The Philistines are here, Shimshon. And they're sitting in the room, meaning that they're waiting to capture him. And again, to him, it was like breaking a thread, just like that, as my dear wife is playing with at the moment. That thread would have Shimshon. It was to him a rope was like a thread. But Delila Shimshon, she is now third time. She can't handle this. You're really messing with me. But to Daberi like a Savim, and she's begging him. Hagida no, how can we tie you up? And Shimshon already realizes, she's beginning to wear him down. But Yomer Eleh intargi et sheva machlafot roshi imamasachet, and he comes up with a strange suggestion, but it's getting very, very borderline. Shimshon is now going into the dial has gone from the green zone into the red zone, and basically what's happened here, he starts talking about his hair. And he's telling her, if you bind my hair with some sort of rollers or whatever, 7 rows of hair, and you tie it up, that's going to make me weak. So already you can see he's beginning to get towards the revelation, which does come, that is to do with his Nazirut. Let's see what's going on. Yudalat. So she took some sort of peg. No, she tied his hair. It seems to be that even that when he was asleep, that he didn't even initially know about it. Again, the Mefarshim, we've got a whole discussion how she did it. And again, she screams, Plishtim alecha Shimshon, vayikatz mishnato. He woke up immediately. Vayisat yateda ereg v'tamasach, and then he just took out this all of this contraption that his hair was tied to. He just removed the whole thing. Now she decides she's got to use pardon the expression, the trump card. Tedvav v'toma eila ech toma ahavtich. How could you say you love me? Wow, she's really wearing the poor guy down. V'libecha ein iti zeh shalosh pa'amim heitalta bi. You've messed with me 3 times already. V'lo igadata li b'meh kochacha gadol, and I'm still none the wiser. And of course, she's now playing on his emotions. How can you say you love me? You can picture the whole scene, right? Again, when you go home and you Google it on the Samson and Delila, I don't remember now how they portrayed this scene. It was in 1949, so I guess it was done with a certain amount of modesty, but maybe not. I don't know. You'll have to see there when you look at the movie again. Cecil B. DeMille, we're just talking about it before. Great film. Ted Zion. Now this went on for a couple of days. And the rabbis say something here which is really absolutely beyond belief. She was causing him grief. She was nagging him or pressing him or whatever the word is. And he was on the verge of death. What was she doing to him, the poor guy? And again, I pardon for those that are a bit squeamish, but this is the way the rabbis present it. Just look at. I'm just going to read you the Radak. It says, "Vata'alseu v'tishaz namut." Ama Rabotenu zal. The rabbis say, "Beloshon nikiya." They say it in a very dignified way, but it's very hard to be dignified about this. Sha'aita shometet kar mitachta b'shat gemar tashmish. She would not allow him, when they were engaged in intimacy, she wouldn't allow him to complete the act, if that's the way to describe it. Basically, she was driving him crazy, right? He is with her and he wants to be with her in the most intimate way. And she now says to him, there was a story, oh my gosh, I don't know why I think of this. There was a story from Brooklyn about 6 months ago. Some of you may have heard this, that there's a guy living in the community who was refusing to give a get. And there's somebody on social media who said, right, we've got a simple solution for the community, is that till this guy gives a get, all the wives go on strike and not going to mikveh. I don't know if anybody heard about this story. It's a pretty amazing thing. I think that the get was given pretty swiftly after that, for reasons I think I don't even have to explain. But it's one of those things. It's really, really unbelievable. It's so shocking, and as the Radak says it, Loshan Nikia, but he doesn't mince his words when he says what was going on here. Amazing. And now, finally, Yud Zayin, Vayaged La'et Kol Libo. She's touched his heart. The word leiv is used in a number of stories. When you get to Shlomo HaMelech, you'll see what happens at the end, even though he's the greatest Baal Seicha that ever lived in terms of his intellect, but when it comes to his heart, as I always explain, he's like every other guy on the street corner. If the attraction is there, and the women that he married knew how to play the bow, the strings, to pull on his strings, particularly with Shlomo, and they even get to the point where he's building an altar for idolatry. Shlomo HaMelech, the smartest guy who ever lived, and he's building idolatrous places. Unbelievable. And that's the story there, and it's the story here, that eventually Libo, his heart, was overtaken. Delila, as we saw before, she weakened to the point where he let it all out. And he explains the following, tells her the whole story. No razor came upon my head. He nazir Elohim ani bibeteni, and he uses the word Elohim, the name of God. And she recognizes that, even though she's a Plishtit, even though she's a Philistine, she knows that he would not use the name of God if it wasn't in telling the truth. Im gulachti v'sar mimeni kochi. If I have a shave, my hair is taken away, then my strength will go away. V'chaliti v'ayiti kol adam. I'll be like everybody else. And at this point, and again, it's not explained why, but we have to understand that she realized this was it. She had vexed him so much to the point where, he said what he said, and she believed it. Yudchet. Vatera Delila ki yigid lait kol libo. Kol libo. He'd revealed the whole secret. Vatishlach vatikra l'sanei plishtim leimo. She sent out, a message immediately to the Philistine captains. Alu hapam. This time you can come in, because they didn't want to come in last time because he would kill them all. Right? He's got a reputation. If you walk in when he's, as it were, ready for you, then you're done for. He's shown that he can do it with the blink of an eye. At this point, they can come in. Ki yigid la, he told her. It's interesting, kriikativ here, because it says ki yigid li, right? He told me, but we read it yigid la. Et kol libo, all her heart, not all his heart. In other words, I know. It's expression we use very often, Devarim hayotzim min haleh, right? It's words that came from the heart. When I always speak about as somebody put it, Noach, right? 120 years he's building the ark, and he must have given droshes every Shabbos, and not in 120 years of droshes, nothing changed. Unbelievable, right? As somebody once said to me, he said that's grounds for dismissal if there isn't, if he was a Rav of a shul. 120 years of speeches, that because it wasn't Devarim Hayotzim min Aleh. Nothing came out of the heart. That was Noach was doing his thing. The tzaddik in Pelz, the famous comparison, the man in the fur coat, he was okay. Everybody else, really, they're going to be destroyed. And here the whole concept is libo, his heart. It came from the heart, and she knew it. She felt it. And what did they do? They came with the money, which again makes the whole thing so sordid in terms of what she did to Shimshon, how he sort of, confided in her and relied on her and playfully had a relationship with her. And all the time, all she was interested in, as you say in Yiddish, the girl. That's all she wanted. Look at Pasuk Yutet. Vatiyashneu al birkea, vatikra leish, vatigalach et sheva machlefot rosho. At this point, she begins to cut off his hair, or somebody comes in, she brings a barber in to do the job. This is when his strength diminished. He went away. And not only that, but they tortured him in such a way, the rabbis say, midah keneged midah. He relied on his eyes. He relied on his ability to see and to judge. He became self-reliant. So the rabbis say, as a consequence, what happened to him, his eyesight was taken away. The word that they used is that he would say, this is yashar. What I saw was correct to do. The case that he had when he married the woman originally, and the case when he fought did with the foxes and everything else, all of that came about because he was using his own personal ability to judge. But it got to a point where he overstepped and he lost out. And as a consequence, a terrible punishment. At this point, he woke up. He thought he was still able to get rid of them. And I'll shake them off. At this point, God was no longer with him. Because the fact is that the Nazirut represented not only a protection for him, but also represented his spiritual strength. And that was now symbolically taken away, and in practical terms, it was gone. And of course, what do they do to him? And it's terrible. They grabbed him, they immediately blinded him. That's one of the worst scenes of that movie. I remember as a kid when I watched it. And they took him down to Gaza. So obviously by default, this was a story happening maybe on the edge of Gaza, the Otef, as they call it today, probably, somewhere around there. And they put him into chains and whatever. The rabbis again say something extraordinary. He was grinding, it says, in the prison. He would grind the flour with millstones. And the rabbis say that tochen is a euphemism. And what's the euphemism? Again, without being too direct about it, but it says that the Plishtim was so amazed at his strength that they thought he still had some strength left, that they would bring their wives to be impregnated with Shimshon. Unbelievable. They used him literally, the expression I suppose they would say today, he became a stud. And that again is so degrading for this man, right? The way that they took away everything from him, his dignity, his everything was gone. And Pasuk Kafbet, Vayochol Sar Rosho L'Tzameach Kasher Gula, and we know the story. His hair began to grow back again, which means that in terms of the law of Nazirut, he could renew his Nazirut. The Nazirut Shimshon has a special status. I don't want to go into that because that's a whole halachic debate. But listen to this, Kaf Gimel. V'sarnei Plishtim nesu lizbag zevak gadol u'dagon Eloheim v'simcha. They decided they were going to throw the biggest party that they've ever thrown in the temple of Dagon, or as it's called in the film, Dagon. I always like the mispronunciation. And they tried to give praise to their God, that he's given us a Shimshon Oivenu, Shimshon our enemy, never ever calling him Shimshon Ayudi. It's so interesting. He still was not perceived as representing the Jewish people, but he was certainly Shimshon, the pain in the side, the thorn in the side. But he's never called Shimshon Ayudi. Even at this moment, he was still deflecting the the reaction from the enemy against Am Yisrael. Unbelievable. And look what happened, Kaf Dalin. This is so moving. And people saw him and they started praising their gods. That our God has given us our enemy, and he destroyed our land. Remember with the foxes, they went through the fields and they burnt up all there was no cornflakes, basically, there was no bread, and that harvest had failed. And he's wiped out a whole bunch of us. We've got him, and look at him, and he's pathetic. When they were tov libam, which is again a euphemism, they were verschnicket, as they say in the movies. They were totally plastered. Let's bring Shimshon in. He can play. We're going to degrade him even more. And and again in the movie, it's presented very well, if I remember rightly. They brought him out of the prison. And he was made to dance or whatever he did before them. And they took him between the pillars, right? And we all know the story. He literally brought the house down. Listen to this, Kavva. He had someone to lead him because he was blind, he didn't know where he was going. And this lad took him, presumably a Plishti. We're not told any rabbinic insights into who the lad was, at least not as far as I know. And Hanicha, he said, leave me, v'hamisheni et amudim. I want to feel the pillars, right? Take me towards these pillars. And the Plishtim didn't realize what he was doing because they thought, his strength has gone, he's no danger. Asher habayit nachon alem, but I know that these pillars are central to the whole structure of this temple. I'll just lean on them, they'll give me a bit of a support. And we know this story, but the most incredible thing comes in the next psukim. The house, meaning the temple here, was full of men and women. V'shama kol sanei, had the whole government, the administration, as we call it. Everyone was there. And even on the roof, there was this incredible structure, which for the ancient world must have been amazing. 3,000 men and women, they all were looking at what they were doing to Shimshon, making fun of him. And here comes something fantastic, and it always gets me every time I read this. Vayikra Shimshon el Adonai vayomar. He called out to God, and he uses the Shem Hashem here. Midas ha-rachamim. Hashem, have mercy. Rachmonos. And he says, Hashem Elokim, which is the combination of Midas ha-rachamim, Midas ha-din. Hashem, who created the world, both in terms of judgment, justice, and also of mercy. Zochreini na, remember me. V'chazkeini na achapam hazeh. Elokim, make me strong one last time. And finally, Elokim is using the name of God, meaning the God of judgment. Right? I've been judged. I accept my punishment. I know what I'm doing. I am going to bring the house down, not only on them, but obviously on me as well. And of course, you can ask the question, would it be allowed to do? If you say Aver Lishma is the principle here, this is the ultimate Aver Lishma. You're not allowed to kill yourself. But in this circumstance, he saves Am Yisrael for years and years. Because the enemy, again, it gives me the chills. What do you do to defeat the enemy? You get rid of their leaders. Right? This is what this whole section is telling you. Get rid of the Sarnei Plishtim, not just the Plishtim, you get rid of their leaders. And Shimshon knew this. He knew this is what he's got to do, because once you get rid of the leadership and you get rid of all the different levels of evil that they have, you're winning. And look what he said: at least I will have a revenge, right, of what they've done to me. And he grabbed the two pillars, and some say he pulled them inwards. Most likely that it means that he pushed them outwards, because that would make more sense. And Asher habayit nachon aleim, on which the house was resting, and he leaned on them, one on the right, one on the left. And all of a sudden, things start happening. Shimshon, and this is the most famous phrase again used, I think even in the modern Hebrew parlance, different situation. Tamod nafshi im plishtim. Let my soul die with the plishtim. right? I wonder how many funerals this has been said. I don't know. I can't watch the funerals that took place of people that came. They brought people back from Gaza, but this is an expression which Tamod nafshi im plishtim. I'm going to die with the plishtim, but I'm going to remain proud and Jewish in those circumstances. Very moving. Vayet b'koach, and he pushed as hard as he could. Vayipol habayit al asranim v'al kol ha'am, and the whole house came tumbling down on everybody, all the leaders. They were all killed. Asher bo v'yu ametim, and it tells us, and this is even more incredible, that the number of people were killed in this one effort was more she'emit b'moto, when and through his death he killed more people. Rabim she'emit b'chayim, more than he killed while he was alive. Unbelievable. And this is again the final thing over here, which I'm finishing with because it's so precious. We saw at the beginning of the book of Judges that Yoshua was not eulogized properly. Yoshua died, and it said that there was an earthquake in Israel, right? It was like a volcano, something happened. And the rabbis say it was because Yoshua was not given the last rites that he deserved. He brought people into Eretz Israel, and he was not treated with respect at the end. So here you see all of a sudden that they've learned that lesson. Everybody of the family came, of his household, and they picked him up. They found him. Again, the idea seemingly was that everything fell away from him, so his body you could locate it, because otherwise we know what happens when a building falls down. And they buried him. I'm going to use a modern terminology. If you go to Beit Shemesh, this is around IKEA. Bein Sarah or Bein Eshta'ol. Next time you're on Route 38, just check it out. It's all there, and it's Somet Shimshon. Unbelievable. So he's buried around IKEA, probably more. I hope it's nearer to Rabbi Slifkin's museum over there, because that would be very matim. But it's around IKEA. That's where he's buried. But Kevin Manoach Avim, and there's the Kevin Manoach. I don't know if that's been revealed. I don't know. For who? And again, finally, for Shafat at Yisrael Esrim Shana, he judged the people for 20 years. In other words, at the end, with all of the maybe you want to call it critique, or the fact that he did go too far, in the end, he is one of the greats. He is one of our heroes, even though he clearly, in his relationship with Delila, was not, it's not condoned, certainly not praised, but at the same time, it did lead to one of the most incredible victories in the period of Judges. And at the end, it's kind of an epitaph at the end to say, he was still a judge, and he judged for a long period of time, and as a consequence, he deserves all of the respect that we can muster to give him. And it's truly remarkable. The reality of it was that his successes certainly outweighed his failures, but it's still a tragedy when he died like this. And then you get the impression that after Shimshon, things really begin to unravel. Well, it started unraveling before that. What we'll see, Bezrat Hashem, in the next couple of shiurim, the two stories at the end of Sefer Shoftim, both really show both a spiritual decay, right? The story of Pesel Micha, and also a moral decay, the story of the Pelegesh Megivah. If that's a story that you haven't yet read, for whatever reason, I think you should read it before we actually go through it, just in case you might be too shocked about it. It really is a shocking story. It's a touch of Sodom, unfortunately, in the Jewish world. These two stories really conclude the whole episode, the whole period of the period of Judges. But again, it's important to put things in perspective. Does Shimshon, what's his report card? Does he get an A+? No, because he compromised himself at the end. But he certainly gets an A for effort. He gets an A for what are you going to say? You're going to check all the boxes in a positive way, because in the end, look what he achieved. Unbelievable. Any comments? I sort of got a bit carried away there, but it's one of my favorite stories in a way. Any thoughts about Shimshon? Good guy, bad guy? I don't know what the panel thinks. Anyone want to comment here? You come to here, Aaron. He's a human being.
I mean, but again, he achieves greatness.
Yeah.
in some ways lives up to his potential, but in other ways falls short.
Yeah, definitely falls short.
Like every human being, we accomplish.
I like the fact that it's not a name that is pushed away. We hear of Shimshon, right? Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. I mean, that was one of the great rabbis of the last century, 150 years ago. So we don't reject him completely in terms of who he is, but his style is definitely it's so one-off. It's kind of scary when you think about it. You know, it really is scary. As I said when we started Shimshon, Eli Cohen, the whole story of the spy. That's a Shimshon, absolute Shimshon.
He's the one-man wrecking crew.
Yeah, incredible.
But that's his. That's the motive, the MO that he chooses.
Yeah.
Because of the time, and then Parshanim want to say that it's because Am Yisrael wasn't worthy of a greater Yeshua. They have to have this sort of lesser level of Yeshua because already, and that in itself seems to be, the whole concept of that the Shoftim is worthy of the people, and the people are worthy of the Shoftim.
Correct.
Shows us the fact that they weren't at the same level as they were perhaps during Dvorah's time or Ehud's time.
And he says when Shimshon is referred to by Yaakov in the brachot, it says immediately after the bracha of Dan that he's going to be like a snake. Lishuatcha kiviti Hashem. That Yaakov already saw that the Jews needed a stronger Yeshua, a stronger salvation. Shimshon was going to provide a hiatus against the Plishtim, but it wasn't going to be foolproof. And of course, by the time we get to the book of Shmuel, things are really Labor, as you will see, Ezrat Hashem, and you're into Shmuel, right? You're already looking at it, and the ark.
Right. The tragedy of this story is that I think that people don't understand it. I think on the surface, people see it as a nice Jewish boy messing around with the shiksas.
Yeah.
And they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand that he, as a hero, is taking the war with the Plishtim away from Bnei Yisrael.
Right.
He's protecting them.
Right.
And what people see on the surface is that he's just doing things that are a little crazy. And they don't. And it's a shame that it's not easily understood.
Correct.
Because once you do understand, you have a lot of respect for the guy.
Yeah, you really. That's what always when I was looking for the epitaph, I would always look for the word respect. We may not necessarily be enamored to the extreme with him, but we do respect him because in the end, look what he did achieve. Incredible thing.
Right.
And he was given a very royal burial in the air, or the equivalent, a judge.
So it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.